Hey everyone, happy Friday to you. As you can see, I'm not alone this week. I have Ryan Schwartz here with me from Mental Health Match. We are talking about something that is relevant to almost all of you, if not all of you, directory profiles. And we're big believers, Ryan and I both are, that if you're spending money, putting time, putting effort into being on directories, you should be getting results. But just having a listing doesn't mean you're actually successful and actually getting clients, right? And so what Ryan and I want to walk you through is what we have seen work when it comes to creating these directory profiles. Ryan's actually going to tell you about some really cool analysis he's done. We're not just telling you these things willy-nilly. Like, it's not just our ideas, it's actually data backed information. So that's what you're getting today. I'm gonna let Ryan introduce himself, just so you know, if this is your first time joining us or you don't recognize my face. I'm Anna. I lead this group. I am a web and marketing strategist, and I work specifically with therapists on things like directory profiles, on things like websites, ultimately helping you market yourself in a way that resonates with your ideal clients and gets you booked. So Ryan, thanks for joining us. Will you give a quick intro and tell us about what you do at Mental Health Match?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder of Mental Health Match, which is one of the nation's first directories that has an intake survey for clients that matches them to therapists. But before I started Mental Health Match, I was actually a researcher in communications and messaging, working with a lot of nonprofits or social change organizations. And I started Mental Health Match because kept hearing these stories of people saying that they wanted to go to therapy, but they found the search for a therapist so overwhelming that they just gave up. And I thought, I have these communication skills that are really about how do we bring two audiences together that speak different languages, that are have different approaches. Can I use that in this situation to help bring clients and therapists together? And so we interviewed a bunch of people who had looked for a therapist, and based off of their feedback and based off of therapist feedback, we built Mental Health Match. And so a lot of what we're sharing today is based off of the research that we've done.
Excellent, excellent. Looks like we have a couple of people joining us. Hi, Olivia. Hi, Lola. Thank you for being here. As Ryan and I are walking through our tips for you today, please don't hesitate to drop questions or thoughts into the comments. We're happy to address them live at the end. If you're catching the replay, drop a hashtag replay, and then any questions or comments you have, that will just make sure that we see anything you want to chat about, even if you're not able to catch us live here on this Friday afternoon. So, Ryan, before we get into the 5 tips, this is a question I get asked by my clients all the time, and I know you do, having created a directory, but do directories actually work? Now, hopefully people in the group know that I'm a believer in them. They absolutely can work to get you clients. What's your perspective on whether they actually work when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, I mean, we hear from a lot of therapists on Mental Health Match that they've been able to build full practices because of the directory. And so I think absolutely they are one of the first places that people go when they Google to find a therapist. But again, it really matters on the content of what you put out there. If you just slap up a photo and some words, it doesn't necessarily resonate. And this is, I think, what we're going to talk about today is figuring out how do you make directories really work for you.
Exactly, exactly. This is where we know that your ideal client is on Psychology Today. I don't care what type of therapist you are, what your niche is. People are on things like Psychology Today. They're on things like Therapy Den. They're on things like Mental Health Match because it's a way easier place to find a therapist than to call up all their friends or to Google the right phrase and get the right thing. It's a really accessible way for your ideal clients to find you. And that's why directories are so important. But you can't just, like you said, slap something up there and expect yourself to just show up. It doesn't work that way. It's really about when someone, comes into contact with your profile, are you making the most of it? And that is absolutely what we're going to be talking about today. So, Ryan, you have 5 tips for us, 5 writing tips specifically. And this is backed by the data that you have seen work inside of Mental Health Match. Will you hit us with tip number 1?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to understand the data a little bit, what we do is we look at the profiles that perform really well versus those that don't. So we look at, the number of prospective clients that land on a therapist profile, and how many of them decide to take a step to contact that therapist versus how many of them bounce and kind of go on to the next therapist. One of the things that we've done is we took the 100 best performing profiles on Mental Health Match and the 100 worst performing profiles, and we did a language analysis to understand what words did they use, like how does this contact different. And that's what I'm about to share with you, is the results of that. But
Amazing.
before I get into those results, I think it's really important to understand what the mindset of clients are. Like, what is that mindset when they're looking for a therapist? So they're definitely often overwhelmed, but half of them are on mobile. They're using a cell phone, right? This is often a very private search, and people are doing it at work. They're doing it around housemates or roommates. They're doing it around family, and so they're often doing it on their phone, right? And on their phone, we kind of in that mindset of scrolling. And so there's a lot of scrolling that happens, and people are looking for specific things. They're looking at a photo, they're looking for keywords that really pop out and resonate with them. And so it's important to keep that in mind as you design your profile. If it's like lots of jargon, lots of heavy language, people just kind of keep scrolling past
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first tip that we learned from our language analysis is that really great performing profiles use what we call words of hope,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Words of hope. They're action words. They paint a picture of what life can be like if the client works with you. They're words like achieve, relieve, improve, ease, develop, like learn. Um, People are looking for a therapist because they have something, like if they have a source of discomfort in their lives. And the first thing that they're looking for is that they want to know that you can help them. And so they're looking for these words that really speak to what their hope is for therapy. And so you want to really focus on the solutions side. Like, what do you make possible for the clients who work with you? That's tip
Yep.
number
Yep.
one.
Yeah, we talk a lot, and we talk about this on when you write your website, when you write your directory profile, when you're on social media, whatever you are doing in your marketing, that ultimately someone is making a decision to work with a therapist, making a decision with their money. So this, especially if you're interested in being private pay or cash pay, they're working or they're looking to spend their money on something that's going to help them be a better version of themselves. So if you aren't casting the vision around what that better version is, then you're not speaking to what they're ultimately motivated by. Is that sort of what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. People want hope. Like they're turning to a therapist for hope. And this relates to some of the communications work I did when we were working with nonprofits. We would say, spend 20% of your time on the problem and 80% of your time on the solutions,
Mhm.
because people are looking for solutions, and that's what grabs them in and makes them feel good about the process. And the same
Yep.
thing here.
Yep, absolutely. Super important. Sometimes you visit those Psychology Day profiles or those other directory profiles that are just like hounding on the problem. The whole thing is about how hard life is right now. And there's something to be said, and I think you're going to get into this in one of your tips about acknowledging the problem. But if you're not complementing that with the solution and
Yeah.
casting some vision around what life could look like, you're missing out on an opportunity.
Yeah, at the point that people are looking for a therapist, they know there's a problem. They
Right.
might not be able to clearly define it or understand it, but they know there's a problem. So
Right.
what they're
Right.
looking for is the solution.
Absolutely. So smart. Excellent. What about tip number 2?
Tip number two is, so just like we say, use words of hope, words of connection are really important. And these are words that create a bond between you and the client. They're words like we, together, you and I, our. People are looking for a connection, right? Just like they're looking for the solution, people are looking for a therapist because they need to connect with somebody to move themselves forward in a certain way. And by using those type of words, you're speaking to that desire that people have for that connection, but you're also kind of starting to build a relationship. They're starting to see a picture of like, oh, you and I can work together. They're getting the idea that you might be an ally, a guide, a source of help for them. And
Yeah.
so these words are really, really important. I think too often we just see profiles that say you, and then me, and there's nothing
Mhm.
that bridges it together to say we. And the
Yep.
we is really important.
Yep, absolutely. It's about setting some expectations. I talk often about how marketing is an introduction to what it means to work with you. And if you're not starting to talk about what that can look like, what working with you is like, again, missing out on an opportunity. So when you're talking about we'll work together to, achieve or do those, words of hope that you were talking about, if you already start to make that connection, help them see themselves in the therapy room with you, essentially,
Yeah.
you're already sort of fostering that idea and that vision in their head in order to get to the ultimate result that they're looking for.
That's right. The therapeutic alliance doesn't start when at the first appointment. It
Right.
actually, for the client, it starts the moment they land on your profile or your
Yep.
website. And that's where these words are really important to bring that together and create the foundation for that relationship.
So smart. I feel like if you take nothing else away from that, realize that the relationship that you can establish and cultivate with your client, you have the opportunity to establish that in your marketing. You don't have to wait until the first consult or when they reach out for the first time. If your marketing is done well, you can start that relationship before they even pick up the phone. It's a beautiful thing. This is the power of marketing.
Totally.
Awesome. Awesome. Lola commented, she said, like when we work together, you can expect. Is that an example of what you would recommend?
Absolutely. Yeah. Or together we will
Yep.
do blank.
Yep. As opposed to I'll help you. That still is creating some sort of separation as opposed to together we will. Because like you said, they're looking for a guide, someone's going to join with them as opposed to direct them or
Yep.
remain sort of separate.
Absolutely. Our work together will. You and I can. Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Number 3, and this is one that I've always found very interesting in your data. So talk me through it.
Okay, we had a really interesting exploration of the word you. And so absolutely you should use the word you. You should bring the client into the conversation, but there's nuance to it. And this actually relates to pretty common communications rule that we would share with nonprofits, which is if you want people to take a logical, rational action, you cannot flood them with negative, overwhelming emotions. When people are flooded with those negative emotions, they're not in the mindset to take a next step forward, to think about a solution. And so when you want somebody to reach out to you, to develop a relationship, to start moving forward as a therapist, to work with you, you're asking them to take kind of a rational, logical, calm action. So in order to make that happen, folks have to be in that mindset. And so the word you actually can backfire because it puts people on the defensive. It overwhelms them. It reminds them of problems they had. It triggers anxiety. And so there's a nuance there. So we often see in the worst performing profiles, there are phrases like, are you addicted to blank? Is your life messy and horrible? Do you keep ruining things? And that just actually floods people with those negative emotions. And on the flip side, when we look at the use of the word you in really great performing profiles, we see them talking about you only in the context of solutions. We can help you, learn healthier coping mechanisms, have better relationships, right? And so the way that we recommend the phrasing is that when you're talking about problems, use a neutral third party term like my clients, right? So my clients often struggle with the way that they look, but when we work together, you can learn to love your body, right? And so it prevents that flood of negative emotions, it prevents that trigger, and instead kind of keeps people focused and seeing themselves as the solutions, because you want people to feel hopeful and not discouraged. You want them to feel really seen and reflected, but not overwhelmed.
Yep.
And when we use the word you only in the context of problems, we're flooding them with those negative emotions that actually prevent them from taking a step forward.
Yep. Yep. This is an interesting one because I write psychology profiles. I've written a lot of them. And I use the word you in the context of problems, which is why this one has been always so interesting. But when I reflect on this, certainly something I can be looking at in my own writing and serving my clients. The other thing that I've looked at, because I actually did go back and look at some profiles that I have written in the past, it has to be done with a light hand. I think we've all seen those directory profiles that the entire, first paragraph is just hounding them with questions. Are you this? Are you that? Are you that? And it's like, whoa, like, wow. Yes, like maybe, but it puts them on the defensive. And so you really, your whole theme here, Ryan, has been putting yourself in the shoes of your ideal client, right? What experience are they having? What are they feeling? How will these words make them feel? And oftentimes, like you said, they want to see themselves in the solution, not continuing in the problem that's brought them here.
That's right. And remember, a lot of these folks are overwhelmed initially. They're not sure about therapy. They might be really new to therapy.
Mhm.
They're on their phone and scrolling. So the moment that you flood them, it's just phone down. They're done. They step
Yeah.
away. They
Yeah.
close your profile.
Right.
And so it's really about nurturing them, helping them feel seen, and
Hmm.
helping them feel hopeful,
Hmm.
not overwhelmed and
Hmm.
defensive.
Hmm. And that is a fine line, certainly.
Definitely a fine line. Yep.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge tip. Yeah, people are already, yeah, definitely. Something they likely have never thought about. But when you think back to the profiles that you're like, there's something really good about that, or that one really bothered me, I bet this one might be at the crux of it.
I think so, and it's all about the feeling. Like, how are you leaving the prospective client feeling when they start to read your profile?
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan, like you want these people to make a logical decision. We do. We want them to make a logical decision about reaching out, but there's heavy, significant emotion associated with this too. They have to feel a certain way. We all, if we've been to therapy ourselves, we do it because we feel a connection, right? There
Yeah,
is something that we can't necessarily put words to, and so it's about emoting that through your profile in order to create what you ultimately want your ideal client to feel when they
that's
work with you.
That's right. Something that I think clinicians think a lot about is like, how do they create this holding container for therapy when they're actually in a session with a client? And it's something that we thought a lot about at Mental Health Match as well. Is like, how do we create this container for what somebody is feeling and experiencing, and like hold them through the process? And
Hmm.
we would hope that your profile does the same thing. Somebody's coming in a very emotional state. How does your profile create the container to actually hold those emotions for them and move them forward to a place where they're optimistic and hopeful?
What a beautiful thing to like use a directory profile to begin that process like on behalf of your clients. It's incredible.
Yeah, same concepts apply.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, cool. Loved number 3. What about number 4? What's your fourth tip for us?
Number four, it might be kind of an easy one, but it's about jargon. And so people don't know the language of clinicians.
Hmm.
And in a communications thing that I often talked about is the curse of knowledge. Once you know something, you don't remember what it's like to not know it.
Yep.
And so after the years of training and school that you've been through, it's really hard to remember what it's like to not have any kind of knowledge about clinical language. And so
Hmm.
we see lots of acronyms or jargon where like people don't know what that means. I mean, everything from words like CBT, EMDR,
Hmm.
presenting issues,
Yeah.
like therapeutic alliance. Like we see
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
in profiles and people don't know what that
Yeah.
means. It's something that we thought about with Mental Health Match, especially when we match people around modalities or different therapeutic approaches. So we don't say like, do you want EMDR? I mean, if you know you want MDR, there's a way to do that. But
Yeah.
we ask people like, are you interested in ways that help kind of retrain your body, like, and
Hmm.
rethink about your neurological responses? Like
Yep.
these are languages. These are words that people understand
Yep.
a lot better. Are you looking for short-term therapy or a long-term kind of deeper therapy, right?
Mhm.
That's the language that people understand. So there's a game out there that I love. It's called Taboo. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you've played it, but in this
Yeah.
game, you
Yep.
get a word and you have to get your teammates to guess the word without using that word or like other similar words. And I
Hmm.
think it's a really fun exercise to play that game with the language, with
Yep.
clinical language. So instead of
Yep.
saying DBT, like how would you describe DBT
Hmm.
without using overly clinical terms?
Yep.
And so it's the same thing with profiles. Like, um, when I used to write messaging for nonprofits, I used to call my Aunt Cindy and I would send her the messaging. I would say, okay, you know nothing about
Yep.
this environmental issue or this
Yep.
racial justice issue.
Yep.
What does this mean to you? Like, what
Yeah.
words do you see? And, she
Yeah.
worked in retail and she didn't have that background. And
Yep.
she would say, I have no idea that language. And so I think it's the same thing here. Like, go reach out to somebody who's not a clinician, who's
Hmm.
maybe very new to therapy or never been in therapy, and say like, what do you not understand here? Like, what does this mean to you?
Yeah.
And you'll get that great feedback. And so I think going through the language you use and just kind of looking at like, oh yeah, I learned that one in school. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
I knew what that was before I had my education. So kind
Yeah.
of reworking that language.
Yep. Yep, using words that your client can understand. I mean, this can be certainly applied to your directories and all the rest of your marketing. Please take a look at your website where if you're just listing off DBT, CBT, and all the modalities you use. I always my tip is always if using that acronym or that language is important to you, follow it up by a description that is in layman's terms, or like you're saying, or just consider not stating it at all, especially when you have limited real estate, like in a directory, using language that we know everyone can understand as opposed to these acronyms that to you make a ton of sense, but to your ideal client doesn't. I've actually found that it often is intimidating to the client because they feel like, well, I don't know what that is, and apparently I need to know that in order to reach out to this person. You're creating this barrier that's completely unnecessary. They don't need to know what that is in order to work with you. So why is it in your profile?
That's right. Remember, they're overwhelmed.
Right.
They're scrolling. And so
Right.
anything at all that triggers them to be like, ugh, I just give up, like that'll do it. And so, yep, totally.
Absolutely.
And I understand, on your website, you might be going for certain keywords that you want to be using,
Sure.
like EMDR. So again, I think as you said, you can say that and then, follow it with a comma and a quick explanation of what that means in layman's terms.
Yeah. I think almost every single time I've ever done website copy for a trauma therapist that does EMDR, we have a section, what is an EMDR, which is a great SEO keyword. And it also gives us the opportunity to describe it in a way that is going to make sense to the client.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. These 4 tips have been great. What about your last one?
So number 5 is about really being specific and having a niche. People are looking for, they want to be seen in what you're writing. They want to feel like, oh, this therapist gets me. And so it means being specific and it means being unique. So let me kind of break those two things apart. I think the first thing is we often see in the language that doesn't do so well on profiles, it's very generic. I'm an empathetic listener who will help you live a better life, right? Like that is something that every therapist should be able to say about themselves, right? And that just kind of blends into the background. It doesn't really speak to the specific needs of people. And the second thing is about niching, right? And so that can be really hard. We actually have a free guide available when you sign up for Mental Health Match about like how to articulate your niche. And I'll give you an exercise from that guide in a second. But it means like there's a communications principle that you say, if you try to speak to everyone, you end up speaking to no one because you just kind of blend into the background. And so oftentimes in the poor performing profiles, we see this like, I specialize in, and then there's like 12 unrelated things. It's like trauma, eating disorders, relationships, identities. It's just, it's like everything. And then the people who see that just are like, that doesn't speak to me, right?
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, and niching can be hard, and a lot of people do. They have like 3 or 4 kind of niches that are kind of different. And so what we suggest is that just focus on one at a time. Maybe you use one niche on your mental health match profile and one niche on your psychology today profile. And after a couple months, you switch it up and you try different, focusing on a different niche because people want to land on your profile and they say, oh, like, okay, you specialize in grief and loss. And that is what I'm experiencing. And so we offer this exercise in the free guide that I mentioned when you sign up for Mental Health Match. But there's two sentences that I think are really important to describing your niche. So the first one is, I specialize in working with people who are blank. And you can fill in the blank with a demographic, an identity, a feeling, right? Like I specialize in working with people who are new to parenting and feeling overwhelmed by all that it entails. I specialize in working with people who are unsure of their sexual orientation and trying to work through a label, this language, because that is reflected in people's experience. People see that and they, this is me. So that's the first one. I specialize in working with people who are blank. And again, it's a lot of times that sentence focuses on problems. So bringing this back, I'm specialized in working with people who are, it's third party language. It's not you. But then the second one is all about the solution. By working together, I can help you blank. And so those two sentences together actually really help kind of bring out your niche. So like, I specialize in working with young adults who are struggling to figure out what they want in a relationship. And by working together, I can help you clarify your needs, boundaries, and communication styles. Like
Yep.
that is a niche
Yep.
that is resonant and that really helps somebody feel excited about working with
Yep.
you, right?
Yep.
I specialize in working with, people who are new to parenting and feeling overwhelmed. And by working together, I can help you find new balance in your life, right?
Mhm.
So that's the combination.
Mhm.
And again, if you've got a couple of niches that kind of feel unrelated, try one at a time. It
Mhm.
often works better than trying to lump it all together,
Yep.
and certainly avoid that laundry list of
Mhm.
stuff, right? Where
Mhm.
you're just like throwing out all of these things.
Yeah.
People do look for specialties, just like, all of the directories we have like little bullet pointed specialties.
Mhm.
People scan that, they get it. Certainly keep that, like, you don't, we find 6 to 10 is the sweet spot.
Mhm.
People who have 20 or 30 tend to not do so
Yeah.
well. It just feels overwhelming because they're trying to do it all. And
Right.
people aren't looking for that at all. They're looking for someone who specializes and has
Exactly.
experience in what they're dealing with. So
Exactly.
good.
Oh man, we could spend a whole probably just an entire interview just on this one because there's so much good stuff in here. You do bring up one of my favorite strategies for directories, which some people haven't considered before, which is having different versions. You are allowed to go in and update your directory profiles as often as you would like. And sometimes clinicians are like, well, but I work with 3 different people, and so I need to be able to get all 3 different people through my directory at once. Actually, if you write your profile to just one, you might get fewer inquiries total, but they're going to be far higher quality, and they're going to actually fit the profile of that ideal client than if you're trying to reach all 3. So keeping a couple different versions, testing them, switching them out is one of the best strategies I've seen for people that, like you said, have niches that might feel a little bit disconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to kind of to make those switches out and to really focus. And different directories get different types of traffic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So mental health match, our game is a lot of social. Like we're out on social and people are finding us that way. It's a different audience than the people who are going to be looking at Psychology Today or who
Yep.
are going through an insurance listing.
Yep.
And so, we get different folks. And I think it's about trying out different niches in different places.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's review those 5 tips real quick. So number 1, words of hope, action words
Yes,
that really paint a picture of the solution that they're looking for.
that's
Number
right.
2, words of connection. So we, you and I, together, our, things like that. Number 3, being careful about the word you. I think we all learned a lot from that one. Number 4, losing the jargon. So making sure you're using words that your client can understand. And then number 5, being really specific and unique, nailing some sort of niche and then switching out the profile or modifying it if you need to.
I love the word unique. It's a great
Unique.
it's a great combination of the words, and it's so true.
Yeah,
Unique.
that was an accident, but it was good.
It's so good.
Awesome. It looks like we've got a lot of positive thoughts here. I don't see any questions other than Lola's, which we were able to answer. So if you are watching and you have questions, don't hesitate to drop them in. But if not, Ryan, what if clinicians want to work more with you? Where can they learn more about Mental Health Match?
Yep, so it's mentalhealthmatch.com. We have a special offer. So we have a 3-month free trial. You don't need to put in a credit card or anything. It's like really simple. We just want you to get the best out of what we're offering to folks. So if you go to Mental Health Match and you go sign up for that 3-month free trial,
I
there's
just
a
dropped the
specific
link in the
link.
comments.
Great. Drop the link there. And if you just use the referral code Get Booked Out, you'll get 90 days completely free of all of our tips, all of our expertise, matching with clients. And we're here for you. I mean, this is why we're doing it. So if you have any questions, either find us on social, on Instagram, we're at Mental Health Match, or you can email us through our website and we'd be happy to help you as much as we could.
Amazing. Ryan, thank you so much. Friends, thanks for being here. I hope you got a ton out of this. I know I did. Ryan, we appreciate you. Really grateful to have you as part of the community. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for hosting this.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.